Welcome back to Beyond the Blueprints. I'm Jason Smith, your host. We're joined today on part 2 with Gary Hill and Betty Smith. Okay, so now we're going to move along to, I'm not going to get into this part because we already talked about it a little bit, but around year 2000-ish, Y2K is coming along. Things are moving at warp speed, technology, sales processes, everything's changing. I grew up, y'all weren't long before, but when I came into the business, the sales process was what it was then, it still is today, in my opinion, or much of it. How we sell, how we present, how we demonstrate, those are all things are timeless. I don't think they've changed much. So, but we enter a time here where 2000 comes around. You're starting to see these sales centers, and they're starting to get a little more flashy, a little more technology. Back to the old site board tables. You'd go into master plan communities, and they have the site boards out, and they might be 3D. They might have certain lights, or we didn't have the touch screens on the TVs like they do now, and they can zoom in with drones and do all kinds of cool stuff. But back then, that site board, and then you took them. What people don't know is you would take them in there and you would go through a process, and it was what we know as the sales process that we all have grown up in and learned in the business, but big picture down to one of a kind. And so where were you in 2000 and what, like I think of Lake Jeanette Sales Center. So you walk in and there's that giant display table, and how many conversations and homes were sold around that table? I mean, almost 1,000.
We sold 1,508 homes.
When did Lake Jeanette start? 90s?
The that's part of the HOA.
Yes.
Is started in 1992.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were in what we call the sunroom at the Wildlife Club. In 1993.
So in the 90s is when that sales center was there, and many other, and I'm just using that one because it's the one I know off the top of my head, but there were many other sales centers that you guys have been involved in, and you walk in, same thing, display table, and then you take a community, or the big community down to, section of the neighborhood, down to individual, what they need to purchase and that kind of stuff. So now that's all in place. Now we're moving into 2000. Some of that's starting to then transition to more audio visual and that kind of stuff. But 2000 is when we started, 2001 I think when we started Smith Marketing. But back in that, just pre-2000 to just north of 2000, that was really a time period when our business changed. Where were you then? What were you seeing changing?
So I think the thing that comes to my mind the most when I think about that period of time is, you've said, internet's coming in, a lot of things are becoming electronic, and it probably wasn't, I know it wasn't 2000, but it was probably a few years after that, maybe 2003, 2004, somewhere in there, that we realized that we needed to have a person on the internet that takes somebody's gone on the internet, say, I want more information, boom. We now have the advent of a internet sales representative that takes that information and turns right around and makes a phone call to them. And so automatically we've got instant contact with them. While they're thinking about it, there's somebody basically on 24/7. They're available. It wasn't until maybe 2007. In fact, I did look this up yesterday. The smartphone came out in 2007. So it got to the point where that sales rep now could go anywhere and have their smartphone and be able to answer somebody, or at least make some sort of correspondence back to someone that's interested in buying a product in their particular neighborhood. So that became really, really, really important, is making that initial contact instantly.
Yeah, the cell phones clearly, and the smartphones clearly have been a game changer, because we can have today, and we'll get into this in a minute, but we can pick up our phone or iPad or tablet, whatever you may use, and you can have access to MLS, you can have access to websites, just anything you need, you find out instantly. We use LandGlide, and we can find out who owns the property, how much land it is. I mean, topo. We can do just all kinds of stuff. It's fascinating. But before 2000, let's go back a little bit because and you mentioned going to work for an ad agency, and then prior to getting in real estate, I did a year and a half at an ad agency.
That was a requirement. I told you if you were going to join me, you had to go work at an ad agency.
I went to Wilmington and worked with an ad agency there, and it was pretty cool. And you learn, but the business has changed now. Back then, it was so much print, and because there wasn't the audio and video technology we have now, and the internet and all that we have that we use. But we then would have to go, okay, you know, what's this cost? How many people does it reach? And you're buying. Back then, we were doing big media buys with the News and Record and with. And back then, that's just what it was.
Well, when you go back to the way we named the company, Smith Marketing Inc. Because if you were a marketing company, you got a 25% reduction in the cost of running your ads. And for the News and Record at that time, which was one of our big vendors, was huge. Homes Magazine, all of those made a huge difference. But I think a lot of what we learned from those agencies and a lot of those concepts are still really important in our application to online advertising. I think a lot of the online advertising miss what we used to call the heart, you know, the heartstrings that bring you into the ad, the call to action, those kind of things. And I think I still look at the internet and ads that we do, which is what we mainly do, and try and find those elements in it, because I think that's still important to the consumer to get them to call you or to put their email address and, you know, have dialogue back and forth that way. But let's digress a little. In 1994, Lake Jeanette Realty was the first real estate company in Greensboro to have a website. Oh my gosh, and I'm telling you what's the truth. The people that we worked with in the advertising industry kept saying, Betty, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to get out in front of this. You're always out there in front, you need to do this. Well, so I agreed to it, but I would only let them put so much information on there. I was like, don't tell them everything. Yes. And then in 4 years, we were telling them everything. You know, it's amazing how the mindset changed. But it was for the better, and it's where it was going. You just had to accept the fact. As salespeople, we always want to keep a little information, so we kept them coming back. But with this new era, you couldn't do that. You had to give them everything, because the people that were, like your company, they were going to do us in if we didn't do it too. Yeah.
Well, and we won't fast forward all the way to today, but sometime between 2000 and today, you know, the phones come out, the computers come out, the internet is getting big, and you know, now it's all about, you know, you're prospecting online, and you're getting all these touches basically, but you can do all that in the world. We talk about it all the time. You can do all that in the world, and you can try to get people, but when they come through the door, if you don't have somebody there who can seal the deal and is confident and knows the information, and you know, we're not here to hoodoo anybody, but we are here to make sure they get good information. And I think that's what you've always taught this company, is always provide good information and be a good resource so they can make a good decision and want to buy with us or in one of our places. And so, you know, we can take all this technology and, you know, but I tell people it can't replace human beings, in my opinion.
Well, it's relationships.
It is. Always has been.
Now, there are some people who can buy a home online. I've come to grips with that. But the majority of people cannot do that. They've got to see it, they got to feel it, they got to touch it, and they need someone guiding them through that process. And then, Lord knows, the whole other rest of the process for contracts and warranties and loans and all of that. There's so much more complicated. I
mean, your buyer today, and even back then, they, like you say, Betty, they came in knowing what your product already was. And one of the things that I always try to teach or train sales reps on were focus on the customer first. Don't focus on the product. Focus on the customer first. Do that discovery where You know, you're setting up trust. You know, you're trying to get trust. You're finding out what their dominant motive is. What's pulling at their heartstrings that says, I came in here, this is why I need to buy. You have to figure that out. They're not going to tell you that. You got to draw it out of them. So it still becomes the relationship that you have to form with that customer before you really say, hey, you ready to buy? I mean, if you
And I
say
know
that
when
too
we were
early.
doing sales, we would go through training with K-Hob, Westminster, Fortis, whatever, all the back in the day. And one of the things I always took with me was they were real big on when you do that discovery, and let's just say the kitchen is a real important piece. When we're going through these models, hang out in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
And talk about everything while you're in the kitchen, while that's the important room for them, or if it's a family room or whatever. Sit down. Keep them there, slow it down a little bit. And those are things I remember. That's not really exactly sales, but they are good techniques for people to remember that still work to this day, and that's what moves stuff.
Tom Ritchie was big on that. He always wanted you to not show a cabinet, you know, here, come here and open the doors. Come here, open the drawers. You
And
know,
for
do
us
those
now,
things.
we say, open it and then let it close by itself.
That's correct,
You know, we
yeah.
talk about the soft close.
Yeah.
You know, even though I might not be selling every day, I'm trying to impart that information to our agents and all.
Yeah.
Demonstrate.
Demonstrate. Yeah.
Demonstrate. Don't just
Touch
go
feel.
in and, you know, often we have people come and say, well, I had an agent, and they brought me out here, and they were on the phone while I looked at the house, and there's some questions I have, you know. And so we certainly want to assist that agent and give them all the information we can, but it goes right back to somebody forgot to demonstrate.
Yep, it does.
One of the things
share,
that I think that we found really worked well for us, and there's not as many of them because of the internet and everything being put on pictures and things, but what we call event homes. You know, at Lake Jeanette, we had 2 parade of homes, which is a past product that the Builders Association used to
Showcase.
offer.
Showcase.
Yeah, that's right.
Showcase.
Showcase of homes,
Parade
yeah.
homes, we get plenty.
Yeah, we'll get to parade, but Showcase, we had 2 of them. We had one in '93.
Yes.
That was the opening night of that was opening night of our sales center. But that brought thousands of people out, and they came out just to find out. Some of them came to get decorating ideas, some came to get remodeling ideas, and some came to think about buying a new home. So that serviced the whole industry,
Yeah.
you know, all of our members, which was a great thing. And then, of course, we have parade of homes, but those homes are not always merchandised like the Showcase was. But we also had Holiday House. We had the Longview home that we did with William Poole and Lexington Furniture. And that's the only house I have ever known that the furniture was made specifically for that home. Once William Poole designed the home, he sent the design to the furniture company, and they designed the furniture for the house. That was a really interesting thing. We did Williamsburg reproductions. There's 2 reproduction homes in there. So, I mean, some of those things, and we did that Lowe's home.
Red Lion.
Yeah,
they were
the
all part of
red line,
Daybreak,
yeah, they were both in Daybreak. But, you know, that is something I think that we've sort of moved away from. And I think it would be good to think about that again, because I think people still like to come see the
We
decorating,
also
come
did the
see.
house we gave away.
Yeah, we
on
did
the
a house
radio.
we gave away.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
WMAG.
well, we did 2 of those.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
we did
I
too.
did one of them, you did.
Yeah, I did one of them, yeah. So that's another whole story too.
Yes, it is.
But anyway, we won't go there. But I mean, there's just some things that we've left behind that maybe we should revisit and think about. How important could they be in our market today?
Yeah, those event homes are the best stories ever.
They are.
We were giving away a home at, where was it, Waterbury?
Uh-huh.
And we were live on the radio with Laura Songster and what was the guy that had the radio morning show?
Ron Davis.
No.
It was Bill.
Anyway, they're live on the air, and they're coming upstairs, and I'm in the master bedroom. The master bedroom's upstairs, and they're walking down the hall, and I'm like, well, where am I going to go? So I walk in the bathroom, and I just like, all right, I'll just sit. And I sat on the toilet, on the seat, and next thing I know, Laura and Bill walk in, and she walks in the bathroom ahead of him and screams. She thought I was using the bathroom, and I'm sitting there. I'm just trying to stay out of the way. Thank God it was radio, not television. Yeah. But I just remember fun stories like that. And before we move on, I'm gonna tell. I got a fun story about Gary, and I'm glad he reminded me because I've realized what a good swimmer Gary was. We were at a friend's, I guess we were down for an engagement. You were there too. We were at an engagement party, and we were on our friend Buck's boat. I mean, we're on the top of this. I mean, it's a big boat, y'all. It sleeps people, so it's a big boat. Yeah, it's a big boat, and it's a long way down. And next thing I know, Gary, I was like, well, if he can jump off, I can jump off. So I had a couple things in my hands there, a drink or two, and I jump off with Gary, and I'm over there trying to swim, and I feel like I'm swimming in place, and Gary looks like Greg Lougain is swimming across. I'm like, what is he doing? I was like, I'm a pretty good swimmer. And anyway, I'm like, man, I am tired. So I turn around and start to head back to the boat, and I run into a school of jellyfish. Oh. And they lit me up, and I was like, oh my God. I got back up on that boat, and I swore, I was like, oh, this is not good. So, but anyway, that's one of my fun stories. We had another, I won't tell the other story on Gary on the boat, but that boat trip was a great time, and we've had, there's so many. Gary and I've been on trips and out of town and stuff, and there's so many good stories, and I don't feel like we get to do that anymore, and I miss all those days, and so just fun.
I've always said, and I've said this for years, and I still do today, that whatever you're doing, have fun doing it, and if you're not having fun doing it, find something else to do. I've always believed that. I've always believed that, if I've got my, those that work with me, they work hard, they work long hours, and they really do the best job, and I had the best people I could ever, like you guys. I mean, I couldn't have had any better than you guys. And so it's always, let's work hard, but we're gonna play. We're gonna have some fun. We'll figure it out, but we'll have fun. And
I remember we were in Charlotte, and I don't know how it always happened, but somehow Gary always ended up with a limo. And then everybody's just piling in the limo, and we're just going around, hopping around from places, just having a great time, and just good people, and man, it was fun. And
that happened in Atlanta too, when we were in Atlanta.
Yeah, I left the limo, but we won't go there. Yeah.
But just good time. I mean, I wish somehow we could bring back some of all that, and there weren't phones and cameras and all.
Well, everybody didn't take it. If they had a phone, they didn't take it with them. And there was a lot of good exchanges in those casual moments. You talked about if somebody had an issue and they were trying to resolve it, or somebody had something they needed to sell and put it out there for somebody. The networking was incredible.
But just think about how many deals. These are just a few stories, but think about how many deals were done sitting in the lobby of the hotel, just having a drink or having some hors d'oeuvres or on a trip or something, whatever, and just that's just the good old way of doing business. I think it's still true today to some degree, but I don't think we just.
Well, I think we had that brief moment where during COVID where that kind of went away because we couldn't, and there were a lot of people that were desperate to get out of their situation and get to a little more calmer, a less crowded location. And so they were buying things without really having a lot of conversation. That's an anomaly, and I hope that never ever happens again for a lot of reasons, very obvious reasons. But it still comes down to me is that you have got to get that relationship, whether you're selling or buying land or you're selling or buying a home.
Whatever you're doing is a relationship.
You've got to form it.
And you made a point about having fun and enjoying. You and I wouldn't still be in the business.
That's right.
If we didn't enjoy it.
That's correct.
Because we don't have to.
That's right.
There was a time when I had to work.
Yeah.
But now I don't have to work. But I work because I want to, and I enjoy it. And that's a whole new perspective. Yes. But if you really enjoy it and do a good job at it, you'll stay with it. Because you don't want to get up in the morning and say, what am I going to do? I got plenty to do now, and so I want to keep it that way.
Yep. Okay.
You guys are obviously still going strong, and you're in the business. You've seen a lot, gone through a lot. There's a lot of agents out there, and I talk to them all the time, and this is also a funny story, but I get agents come to me all the time, and they're scared to death of my mom.
And
They're
I'm
like-
the nicest person.
And
Why
she
would they
is,
scare me?
and nobody, and no, I tell everybody, I'm like, what? They are scared to death of her. We have agents in this office sometimes be like, well, I didn't want to bother your mom. Like, bother her. What is she just like anybody else? And they're like, no, she's Betty. And I'm like, oh Lord, But she gets that. We get that a lot. I'm sure you probably do too. And so I want. There's a lot of people hopefully watching that would, my question to you is, what advice for an agent in the business, maybe already in the business, getting in the business, because I'm not saying, what's advice from sales, but what advice do you have for them, each of you, as far as, how to maintain, how to succeed? And I'm not talking about X's and O's, but just what are some things would you tell them to do?
I think it's we've talked a little bit about this, and I think the biggest thing for me is to, welcome change. It's going to come. Don't resist it. Understand it, because it might lead to another door. And that's what's happened to me in my career, is doors have opened up. That's right. And that's a change. Mm-hmm. And I've said, yes, I'm going to go. And I'm sure it's the same with you. Yep. I mean, doors will open up, but I've stayed true to the industry. This is what I love doing. Whatever aspect of it was early in the years when I was drawing plans, or all the way to the point where I'm building homes right now. I've just really, really stayed true to that. But no change is going to happen, and I think we're going to see a lot more change than we probably ever have seen. And I think that's that you got to do that. And the other thing I would say is always be open to new ideas and new training. Training to me is huge, and if people in our industry think, well, I've been selling it for years, I don't need any more training. You do need training. I've always had, a strive for role playing, and I don't know if that happens anymore. I hope it does. It would if I was around, because I really do believe in, in practice. I say practice. Tom Ritchie always said, perfect practice makes perfect. Not practice, but perfect practice makes perfect. And so, I mean, that's 2 cents worth that, I would say. What you got?
Well, I come at it a little differently. I had to decide early on in my career, because real estate can consume you. So I would say you've got to know who you are, but you need to be true to your faith, your religion. You need to be true to your family, and then true to work. You've got to keep your priorities straight, or you will get so consumed that you leave out. One of the things that was always important to me was always to be there for my kids when they were in school or playing ball or whatever. And while I was on the Board of Education and working full time, I only missed one ball game in those 8 years. Yeah. And so, and to me that was really important. Kids might not even remember it or even know it, but it was important to me. But faith, family, work, you just got to keep it in perspective, and be willing to work. One of the things the agents here say, you are so on focus when you're in the office. Everybody could be outside my office talking. I'm paying no attention. I'm focused on what I'm doing.
That's the truth.
And I am on task, And so when you're working, work. So many people don't really work. They play at it. But having been raised on a tobacco farm, you can relate to this. Yeah. We worked hard.
Yes, we did.
So working in real estate.
It's the hardest work you'll ever have.
That's right. Yeah, I know Jason will give me this, but it is. And so when you come and you're in a profession and you're working, it's a different stress level, but it's not a work like we did. Yeah. Exactly. So you want to make it on the long haul, and if you go too hard at work and leave everything else behind, you burn out. Yeah. And I think that happens to a lot of really good agents.
And the only thing I would add to that is that I've seen, I'm going on my 25th year, which is fascinating to me. I feel like I just started a couple years ago.
Are we feeling older now when he says that?
We're not even 25 years ago.
No,
I know 25 is a small
ago?
feat when you're 50 plus, but I mean, come on. But what I would say is I noticed is relationships, because just yesterday, I had a builder call me that used to be a huge custom builder in our market, high-end very luxury custom, and he's been out of the game for a while. Just, you know, the downturn probably had something to do with that, but he called me because he just knew me from being in the business, and I'm still in the business, and you know, and that's why my phone rang. But you don't ever know. I've probably
And you answered your phone.
and I answered.
Yes.
I did answer my phone,
Yeah.
and
A
which
lot
I
of
get
people
accused
don't.
a lot of not, but I try. But you know, this gentleman and I talked for a long time, and we really didn't even talk about selling houses. I was just catching up with him. I feel like just yesterday we were sitting on boards at the Home Builders Association, and you just don't know where your next opportunity is going to come, and so you always try to, and maybe you can't always, but try to leave on good terms with anybody and have good relationships, because I never know when somebody's going to call mom or either one and say, oh, well, we have a piece of land and y'all know so-and-so, or y'all know, or y'all have done this. And I mean, having been a part of big projects and successful projects, success is everything as far as when people call you and they say, oh, you promised to do this and you did this. You followed through. You're successful because you did what you said you were going to do. It's not that success is everything, but doing what you say you're going to do and making it successful because you did the right thing, and having good relationships. And I think that is something that's huge. I thought about that last night when that gentleman called me, and I was at home last night. I just think, gosh, I have not heard from him in ages, and it was good to talk to him. And just now I know he's doing good. He's ready to. He's wanting to get back, and he's got a couple investors, and he's ready to get back at it. And just very cool, and a good person. And I've kind of missed him now that I think about it.
Bring up a great point that I like to always say too, is that be involved in your industry, and we have been.
Yes.
We have been involved in our industry. And the thing that warms my heart is to have people that have worked with me for 54 years, all through that time, and they are involved. They're involved with the Realtors Association, or they're involved with the Builders Association, and they're involved, and they're moving up into those organizations. And that, to me, is a sign of success.
You had a piece of that.
Yeah, a little piece. It was encouraging them.
You may have more than you think.
They saw me doing this. They see you doing it. They see you doing it. And then they say, oh, we need to be doing that, because that's where those contacts come from. That's where those conversations start.
I mean, I can't tell you, I'm just going to use an example, but how many times that I've watched you, like, if we're working on a piece of land and you're like, oh, I know somebody at Piedmont Natural Gas, or I know somebody at Duke Energy, or wherever, from being involved, people, and you're able to, you can actually call somebody and just help me, and they usually will. They'll try to help you, but if you don't have those relationships, you have no chance at that. And so that you've done that plenty of times. I've seen you where you're like, oh, I have to call. Oh, I know so and so. Let me just see if I can call and find out who to talk to, or what. Just point me in a direction, and it has helped us.
It has.
So
Big help.
okay, well. Thank you for joining us today. Thank Gary. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you
if you're watching us here today, you can go view other podcasts on all major platforms. Go to triadnewhomeguide.com if you want to follow from there. But thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode.